Well, we felt like we were in another world. It was sort of segregated from what was happening in the real world. But I think it was simpler.
Yeah, I bet you kids are hungry. How about some of that roast beef and apple pie, Charlie?
I don't know why I didn't think of it.
What if one of the most wholesome family shows of the 1960s was also packed with on-set chaos, disappearing characters, and quietly groundbreaking moments? My Three Sons ran for over a decade, charming audiences with its simple stories. But behind the scenes, it was anything but ordinary, from filming tricks to continuity blunders and cast shakeups to cultural impact. The show has a hidden history few fans ever saw.
Please sit down. Of course, this isn't standard office procedure, General Stryker.
Let's take a step back into television history and look closely at one of the most enduring family sitcoms of the 1966 seasons, My Three Sons. First aired in 1960, the show followed the life of a widowed father, Steve Douglas, raising his three sons with the help of other family members. It ran for an impressive 12 seasons, concluding in 1972, and became one of the longest-running sitcoms in TV history at the time. While it was praised for its wholesome values and family-friendly tone, what many viewers didn't see were the small mistakes, production quirks, and behind-the-scenes decisions that gave the show its unique texture. When watching a show that lasted over a decade, it's natural to expect a few inconsistencies, but My Three Sons had its fair share of oddities that have become interesting talking points for fans and TV historians alike. Some of these came from genuine production oversights, while others were just the result of the pressures and limitations of television production in the 1960 CS. One of the more surprising things about the show was the way it handled its animal cast members. The family dog, who appeared regularly in early seasons, was not portrayed by a single animal actor. In fact, 3 different dogs played the role over time. Despite this, the transitions were generally seamless. The changes weren't announced or acknowledged on screen, and viewers rarely noticed. Animal doubles are a common practice in the industry, especially when filming over long periods, but it's still interesting that a family pet could be replaced multiple times without most people picking up on it. Continuity errors are something every long-running show encounters, but My Three Sons had some notable examples. In one episode, the character Robbie is shown wearing a cast on his arm. The cast appears in one scene, then mysteriously disappears in the next, with no explanation given. This kind of mistake likely occurred during editing, or due to scenes being shot out of order, something that was quite common in that era. It may seem like a small detail, but for eagle-eyed viewers it stands out. Another memorable moment involved the youngest son Chip during a scene that was meant to be serious and emotionally charged. While carrying a tray of food, the actor accidentally dropped it, causing a bit of chaos on set. Instead of redoing the scene immediately, the cast and crew broke into laughter. While the scene was eventually reshot, the moment became one of those behind-the-scenes memories that people involved with the show fondly remembered later. Incidents like these helped to create a more relaxed and sometimes spontaneous environment during filming, even if they weren't part of the final cut. Sometimes production oversights were actually captured in the final version of episodes. In one particular kitchen scene, a crew member can be seen walking through the background. It's brief, but once noticed, it completely breaks the illusion of a private family moment. These kinds of bloopers remind us that, for all the polish a finished episode may have, it's still the product of a working set where dozens of people are behind the camera, trying to get everything right. The show wasn't only challenged by continuity and bloopers, it also had to adapt to significant technological changes. Initially filmed in black and white, My Three Sons later transitioned to color in 1965. This was a major shift, both technically and creatively. Filming in color required changes to lighting, makeup, wardrobe, and even set design. Everything had to look more vibrant and precise under the new technology. It wasn't just a matter of flipping a switch. The entire production needed to adjust to ensure the visuals remained consistent and appealing. At the height of its popularity, My Three Sons aired new episodes twice a week. This kind of demanding schedule left little room for error. Scenes were sometimes rushed, lighting was occasionally inconsistent, and props could be misplaced or mismatched from one take to another. These weren't always major problems, but they contributed to the small inconsistencies that sharp-eyed fans might notice. The fast-paced nature of production meant that there wasn't always time to reshoot scenes just because of minor errors. What's particularly interesting is that these production quirks didn't seem to affect the show's success. In fact, they've become part of its charm. Viewers of the time weren't as focused on perfect continuity as modern audiences often are. Instead, they tuned in for the characters, the humor, and the warmth that the show reliably delivered each week. In a way, these imperfections only serve to highlight how much television has changed over the decades. Today, with the availability of high-definition playback and streaming platforms, mistakes are easier to spot and are often widely discussed online. But in the 1960 ses, most viewers simply enjoyed the story without noticing or dwelling on such details. It's also worth noting that the family-focused nature of My Three Sons made it a staple in American homes. Parents could sit down with their children and enjoy a program that reflected everyday life, albeit in an idealized and light-hearted form. This consistent tone made the show a comforting presence on the air, even when small slip-ups made it into the final cut. For the actors, directors, and crew, the priority was always to maintain the emotional integrity of the show, rather than obsess over every minor inconsistency. That said, not all the behind-the-scenes facts are mistakes or oversights. Some were simply creative decisions made to accommodate the needs of the cast and crew. For example, Fred McMurray, who played the father, Steve Douglas, had a very specific filming schedule that shaped how the show was produced overall. Known as the McMurray method, this approach meant all of his scenes were filmed in concentrated blocks, sometimes months apart from the rest of the episodes. While this unique production style had its own challenges, it also helped define the rhythm of the show. Production anecdotes such as these help provide context for why certain inconsistencies occurred. The goal wasn't always to create a flawless piece of television. Instead, it was about delivering an enjoyable and relatable story each week. Over the years, the small errors became part of the show's legacy. Proof that even a long-running, award-winning series wasn't immune to the practical realities of television production. One of the most talked about aspects behind the scenes was the so-called McMurray method. Named after lead actor Fred McMurray, this unique production approach involved filming all of his scenes for the entire season in a very short period, sometimes just over 2 months. Instead of shooting the show in chronological order, McMurray would complete his parts out of sequence and then leave the set, allowing the rest of the cast and crew to film around his pre-recorded material. The reason for this was practical. McMurray, a well-known film actor before joining the show, had other commitments and preferred to limit his time on set. Rather than lose a major star, the producers adjusted the entire show's production around him. While it allowed McMurray to maintain a flexible schedule, it caused headaches for the editors and created continuity problems across multiple episodes. The characters' clothing, hairstyles, and even the way they spoke would sometimes shift noticeably between scenes. In some cases, emotional arcs felt disjointed, as reactions filmed months later were spliced together with earlier material. This method may have been innovative for its time, but it came at a cost. Viewers occasionally spotted obvious continuity errors, like a character holding an object in one hand in one scene and then holding nothing in the next. Or, in more glaring instances, a character's age or appearance would change significantly from one episode to another. Even within the same storyline, these inconsistencies weren't always addressed or explained, largely because most television at the time wasn't designed to be re-watched or scrutinized frame by frame. It was assumed that viewers would watch an episode once and move on. Beyond the McMurray method, the show's character development also introduced continuity challenges. The series initially focused on 3 sons, Mike, Robbie, and Chip. But as the years went by, this dynamic shifted. When the actor playing Mike left the show, the writers introduced Ernie, a new character who was later adopted by Steve Douglas. While this kind of cast change isn't unusual in long-running shows, The way My Three Sons handled it was particularly abrupt. Mike's departure wasn't given much explanation, and Ernie's sudden presence as a legal member of the family raised questions that the series never fully resolved. Even more confusing was the show's handling of character ages. Chip's age was a frequent source of inconsistency. In some episodes, he was said to be around 11, while in others he appeared close in age to his older brother Robbie, depending on the storyline. This confusion can partly be explained by the actors themselves aging naturally over the show's run, but also by the fact that episodes were often written and filmed out of chronological order. Ernie, too, experienced a shifting timeline. Originally introduced as a friend of Chip's from school, he later became his adopted brother and was described as being 3 years younger than him. At different points in the series, however, that age gap appeared to shrink or disappear entirely. These kinds of timeline shifts may seem small, but they contributed to a sense of disorientation for viewers trying to track the character's growth and development. The show's portrayal of home life also saw several unexplained changes. In the earlier seasons, the Douglas family lived in a single-story suburban house. Later on, the family is seen living in a much larger two-story home, but no on-screen move or explanation was provided. For long-time viewers, this sudden shift in the family's living environment felt like a missing chapter in the story. Instead of acknowledging it, the writers seemed to expect viewers to simply accept the new setting as the norm. In today's television standards, where continuity is heavily emphasized, such a change would likely receive more scrutiny. But at the time, it was not uncommon for sitcoms to make quiet alterations without addressing them. Perhaps one of the more unusual inconsistencies came from the character of Bub, the family's original housekeeper and guardian figure. In different episodes, Bub was referred to by different full names: William Francis O'Casey in one, and Michael Francis O'Casey in another. This may have been an oversight by the writing team, or it may have resulted from different writers working on scripts without a unified character Bible, which is now a standard part of modern TV production. Either way, it added to the sense that character identities were not always tightly managed. Bub's personal backstory also varied from episode to episode. Sometimes he was described as a widower, in other instances he mentioned being divorced. His age was also inconsistent. In one scene from 1962, Bub claimed to be 63 years old, yet William Frawley, the actor who portrayed him, was actually 75 at the time. This mismatch may not have bothered viewers initially, but it does highlight how the show's character histories were often flexible and subject to change as needed. As cast members left the show, these inconsistencies became even more noticeable. Mike's sudden departure was explained in a throwaway line that he had moved away after returning from military service. Robbie left the show after taking a job in Peru, again with little narrative build-up or emotional closure. In each case, the family carried on as though nothing significant had changed, which stood in stark contrast to the emotional weight such events would typically carry in real family life. These abrupt exits and loose endings contributed to a fragmented sense of continuity over the show's long run. One recurring issue involved background details such as clothing, props, or even hairstyles. Because the show was filmed out of order and often with significant time gaps between scenes, the wardrobe department faced a tough job keeping everything aligned. There were occasions where a character's shirt would change between scenes set minutes apart in the story, or a piece of furniture would appear and disappear in the same episode. These small mistakes weren't always caught during editing, especially given the limitations of the time, but for attentive viewers they could be distracting. All of these examples paint a picture of a show that, while beloved and successful, was also a product of its production environment. Unlike modern TV series that often have large continuity teams and extensive post-production processes, My Three Sons operated in a more straightforward and faster-paced manner. The focus was on telling stories that resonated emotionally with audiences, rather than ensuring every visual or narrative detail lined up perfectly from episode to episode. Despite these challenges, the show's popularity remained strong. Viewers developed attachments to the characters and their evolving lives, even if some of those lives changed suddenly or without clear explanation. In fact, Part of the show's lasting charm lies in these imperfections. They serve as a reminder of how television was made in an earlier era, less polished perhaps, but often more reliant on the strength of its writing, cast, and emotional connection with the audience. Casting was a crucial part of the show's success. Each actor had to bring a specific quality to their role, while also fitting within the dynamic of the fictional Douglas family. The central figure of the show, Steve Douglas, was played by Fred MacMurray, a well-established actor with a long history in film. Known for his roles in classics like Double Indemnity and The Apartment, MacMurray brought a certain gravitas and calm authority to the part. His casting was not accidental. Producers sought someone with both screen presence and wide appeal. However, convincing him to commit to a television series was not easy. At the time, many film actors were hesitant to transition to television, which was still seen as a lesser medium by some in the industry. Eventually, MacMurray agreed to take on the role, but only under very specific conditions. He requested a filming schedule that would allow him to complete all of his scenes for the entire season in a concentrated block of time. This approach, later called the MacMurray method, became a defining part of the production process. It required the rest of the cast and crew to work around his limited availability, shooting their parts both before and after his scenes had been recorded. While this was logistically complex, it allowed the show to retain its lead actor for over a decade. The sons were cast with just as much care. Tim Considine played the eldest, Mike. He had already gained recognition from his roles in Disney productions, and his clean-cut image was seen as a good fit for the responsible and level-headed older brother. Don Grady, who played Robbie, was initially brought on as a stand-in during auditions. However, his musical abilities and easygoing screen presence impressed the producers, and he was given a permanent role. Stanley Livingston, cast as the youngest son Chip, had a natural curiosity and mischievous charm that made him a favorite with audiences. His younger brother, Barry Livingston, would later join the cast as Ernie, the adopted son. The inclusion of real-life siblings brought a level of authenticity to the interactions between the characters, something that viewers responded to positively. Over time, the show introduced new family members, often due to changes in the cast or storyline shifts. One major change came when William Frawley, who played the family's original caretaker Bub, left the series. He was replaced by William Demarest, who took on the role of Uncle Charlie. Interestingly, Demarest was actually older than Frawley in real life, even though he was meant to be the younger relative. Despite the age discrepancy, Demarest quickly found his footing in the role, and his chemistry with the rest of the cast helped ease the transition for viewers. Frawley, best known for his role in I Love Lucy, had a reputation in the industry for being difficult to work with. However, on the set of My Three Sons, he was regarded as professional and efficient. Many of his co-stars recalled that he could deliver a perfect take with very little rehearsal, something that was highly valued on a tight production schedule. Set design played an equally important role in grounding the show in a familiar and believable environment. The Douglas family home served as the central setting for much of the series, and it needed to reflect the middle-class lifestyle of a widowed father raising 3 boys. To save costs and time, the production team reused and repurposed existing sets from other films and television shows. For example, the exterior of the Douglas house had previously been used in classic films like Home on the Range, while the kitchen set originated from a different series altogether. Uncle Charlie's bedroom was reportedly adapted from a set used in Captain January, an older film from the 1930s. This reuse of sets was not unusual for the time. Studio resources were limited, and it made financial sense to repurpose what was already available. However, the team behind My Three Sons took great care to customize each space so that it felt cohesive and consistent within the context of the show. The family's living room was designed to be both practical and warm, with a combination of modern furniture and personal touches like photographs and small trinkets. These details help reinforce the idea that this was a real home, not just a collection of props on a sound stage. Filming took place primarily at General Service Studios in Hollywood, a well-known location for many television series of the era. While the majority of scenes were shot indoors on constructed sets, the show also included occasional exterior shots. The house shown in these outdoor scenes was located in the Toluca Lake area of Los Angeles. Though viewers might have believed the characters lived in a real home, most of the show's interior scenes were filmed under the controlled lighting and layout of a studio. The production team also employed certain filming techniques that were considered innovative at the time. The use of videotape technology, which was relatively new in the early years of the show, allowed for faster editing and better preservation of episodes. It also gave producers the flexibility to review footage more easily and make adjustments without having to reshoot entire scenes on film. This efficiency was important, particularly given the complex filming arrangements created by McMurray's schedule. In terms of direction, Peter Tewksbury played a key role in shaping the tone and style of the show during its early seasons. Tewksbury was known for his straightforward, character-driven approach. He favored simple camera work that focused on the interactions between characters rather than flashy visual effects or complicated scene transitions. His goal was to create a sense of realism that audiences could relate to. He often worked closely with the cast to develop their characters, encouraging them to draw from personal experiences and natural behavior. The show's music also played an important part in creating the right atmosphere. Frank DeVol, the composer for much of the series, crafted a memorable score that was both light and emotional. The harmonica-driven theme song became instantly recognizable and helped set the tone for each episode. Music was used carefully throughout the series, not to overshadow the scenes, but to support them emotionally, highlighting moments of humor, conflict, or tenderness. When Jane, highlighting choke and tenderness, finally managed to sing, "It doesn't say a motion, look short and emotional." Despite the occasional challenges, such as continuity errors, recast roles, or the constraints of working around a lead actor's limited availability, the production of My Three Sons was remarkably consistent in its core values. It maintained a clear focus on family, respect, and the ups and downs of everyday life. The cast and crew worked within the limitations of their era, but their resourcefulness and commitment allowed the show to maintain its quality and charm. Today, the behind-the-scenes elements of My Three Sons are often studied by fans and television historians, not only for their historical value, but for the insights they provide into the world of early American television. The decisions made about casting, set design, direction, and production reflect a transitional moment in entertainment. When television was beginning to take itself more seriously and move towards the sophisticated storytelling we now associate with modern TV, at the heart of the series was the story of a widowed father raising his three sons with the help of extended family members. This alone set it apart in a television landscape that, at the time, was largely dominated by depictions of traditional two-parent households. By focusing on a single father, the show offered a fresh perspective on family life. Fred MacMurray's portrayal of Steve Douglas was calm, thoughtful, and consistent, presenting an image of fatherhood that resonated with viewers. He wasn't overly strict or emotionally distant. Instead, he balanced discipline with understanding, a characteristic that made the character feel genuine. The show also quietly addressed evolving social dynamics. As the series progressed, characters grew up, married, moved out, or were introduced in ways that reflected changing family structures. When the character Ernie was adopted into the Douglas family, it marked a significant moment in the series. At a time when adoption was not commonly portrayed on television, the inclusion of Ernie helped normalize the idea of blended families and alternative paths to parenthood. The show didn't make a major spectacle out of it, which made the portrayal all the more powerful. It was just part of the story, as natural and accepted as any other family development. My Three Sons also captured the subtle shifts in American society during the 1960s and early 70s. The show took place in a suburban setting that reflected the aspirations of many middle-class families at the time. The household featured modern appliances, a structured routine, and children growing up in a seemingly safe, predictable world. It was a picture of post-war optimism, but it didn't entirely ignore the pressures and complexities of real life. Episodes touched on topics such as education, relationships, and career ambitions. While never overtly political or provocative, the show quietly reflected the changing landscape of American life. The impact of the show wasn't just limited to content. It also influenced the technical and structural approach to making family sitcoms. My Three Sons was one of the first shows to adopt the use of a laugh track consistently, a trend that would soon become standard in sitcoms for decades to follow. It also demonstrated that a television series could successfully revolve around a male lead in a parenting role, something that was still relatively uncommon at the time. Over the years, the show introduced dozens of recurring and guest characters, many of whom played multiple roles. This was a common practice in early television where actors would often return as completely new characters in different episodes or seasons. One well-known example was Doris Singleton, who played both Robbie's girlfriend's mother and later Steve's future mother-in-law. Her ability to portray distinct characters on the same show reflected the flexibility of the actors and the more relaxed approach to continuity that existed in earlier television production. Similarly, the show cast multiple sets of twins and even quadruplets to create the illusion of triplets on screen. In one case, twins were rotated during shooting to ensure the young actors had time to rest and comply with child labor regulations. These casting decisions, while largely invisible to viewers at the time, helped keep the production running smoothly and revealed the clever solutions used by producers to manage the challenges of a long-running series. Behind the scenes, the cast and crew of My Three Sons were known for their professionalism and camaraderie. Stories from production paint a picture of a tight-knit team working under unique constraints. Fred MacMurray's tight filming schedule meant that everyone else had to adapt, often filming scenes months apart or out of order. This could be difficult, but over time the cast became used to the rhythm and developed a workflow that allowed for continuity and emotional consistency even when scenes were filmed in a fragmented way. Despite the many challenges, the show remained remarkably consistent in tone. It didn't rely on major plot twists or dramatic events to capture attention. Instead, it focused on everyday life, the small triumphs, misunderstandings, and heartfelt moments that make up real family relationships. That simplicity, combined with relatable characters, gave the show its lasting emotional appeal. Critically, My Three Sons was well received. It earned several Emmy nominations, including nods for Outstanding Comedy Series and Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series for William Frawley. The show's high ratings, particularly during its early and middle years, were a reflection of its strong audience following. At its peak, it was regularly watched by over 25 million viewers per episode. For a series that avoided controversy and political commentary, this was a major achievement. It proved that a gentle, family-focused program could hold its own in a rapidly changing media landscape. As television evolved and new genres emerged, My Three Sons remained a reference point for future shows. Its depiction of a non-traditional family paved the way for other series to explore similar themes. Shows like Full House, The Brady Bunch, and Step by Step all drew inspiration, whether directly or indirectly, from the blueprint laid out by My Three Sons. The idea that a sitcom could combine humor, heart, and subtle social commentary became a model for decades of family television. The cultural legacy of the show also extended into other media. It inspired comic books, merchandise, and later syndication across various networks, introducing the show to new generations of viewers. Its timeless appeal made it an easy fit for reruns, especially during the 1980s and 90s, when nostalgia programming found a strong audience. The show was frequently aired on cable networks and local channels, ensuring that its stories continued to be seen and appreciated long after original production ended. In reflecting on the full run of My Three Sons, it's clear that the show achieved something quite special. It captured the spirit of a generation while remaining adaptable enough to continue evolving with its audience. Whether it was through the use of innovative filming methods, casting choices that reflected real-life families, or stories that mirrored the joys and frustrations of everyday life, the show maintained a strong sense of identity. What made the series endure wasn't just its relatability, it was also the sense of comfort and stability it offered. In a time when American society was experiencing significant change, My Three Sons provided a consistent message that families come in different forms, that challenges can be overcome, and that love and understanding are at the core of every household. Even today, fans of the show continue to discuss their favorite episodes, share memories of watching it with their families, and reflect on the lessons it subtly taught. It serves as a reminder that television doesn't always need to be loud or provocative to make a lasting impact. Sometimes, quiet sincerity and consistent storytelling are enough. In the end, My Three Sons stands as a testament to the power of simple storytelling, strong character development, and thoughtful production. Its influence can still be felt in the way modern television handles family dynamics, and its place in television history remains secure. The show's legacy is not just in the number of episodes it produced, but in the millions of lives it touched, and the gentle reminder it offered that family, however it is defined, is something to be cherished.